Have you ever sat alone in your home, wondering how something so beautiful, your relationship with your children, could turn so cold? You gave them everything, your youth, your energy, your heart, and now it's like you don't exist. Calls go unanswered, holidays pass with silence. Your love is met with distance, and your presence feels more like a burden than a comfort. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. It's one of the deepest heartbreaks a parent can experience. Being pushed away or outright rejected by your own child. There's no warning, no guidebook. One day they're calling you for advice or asking for help, and the next, they vanish. Maybe it was over a disagreement. Maybe it was something you said or didn't say. Maybe it wasn't even about you at all. But the silence, the blame, the coldness, it all lands squarely on your shoulders, and it hurts like nothing else. And in that pain, you start looking for answers. Friends might tell you to go no contact, that if you cut them off, they'll miss you, that your silence will make them see your worth. So you try it. You stop calling, you stop texting, you stay away from their lives, thinking that one day they'll wake up and realize they were wrong. But here's the truth no one talks about. No contact isn't always the healing you think it is. It can bring peace in some ways, but it can also leave you sitting by the window, waiting for a message that never comes. You're still thinking about them, still aching, still wondering if they ever think about you. And that's the real pain. Not the silence, but the hope that lives inside it. Let's talk about that moment, the fall, when the relationship with your child collapses and leaves you breathless. It doesn't always happen in a dramatic way. Sometimes it's subtle. The calls get shorter, the tone gets colder, invitations stop coming. Then maybe there's a disagreement, or a moment of tension, and suddenly they're gone. Not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. You go from being a parent to being a stranger in their world. And it breaks your heart in a way nothing else ever could. At first, you blame yourself. You replay every conversation in your head, every memory. Did I say too much? Did I say too little? You scroll through old photos, trying to find a hint of where things started to change. But the truth is, you may never get a clear answer. People change. Sometimes they harden, sometimes they follow pain or influence from others. And sometimes children lash out at the people who love them the most because they know that love is deep, and it will absorb the blow. But even the strongest parent can only take so much. That's when you start searching for a strategy to protect yourself. You hear about no contact. You think, Avo, if I just disappear, they'll feel the emptiness I feel now. So you pull away. You unfollow them. You stop sending texts. You tell yourself this is strength. And in some ways, it is. You're no longer chasing someone who clearly doesn't want to be chased. You reclaim your dignity. But here's the hard part. Deep down, you're still hoping. You still check your phone. You still peek at their social media. You still wonder, do they miss me yet? And that hope, quietly hiding behind your silence, still holds you hostage. Because you're not truly free, if your peace depends on their response. This is where many older parents get stuck. No contact gives the illusion of control. But the real power isn't in what you cut off. It's in what you rise above. That brings us to a shift, one that changes everything. And it's not about playing games. It's not about pretending not to care. It's about reaching a place inside yourself where you truly stop needing their approval, their attention, or their return. It's something stronger than no contact. It's called indifference. Now, don't confuse indifference with bitterness. This isn't about becoming cold or angry. It's not about pretending you don't love your children. You always will. That's what makes you human. But it's about reaching a place where your life is no longer shaped by what they do or don't do. Where you stop asking, will they come back? And instead ask, what can I do today to bring peace into my life? Difference is powerful because it means you've moved beyond reaction. You're not just silent, you're stable. You're not ignoring them out of pain. You're simply living without them in a healthy, grounded way. That shift begins when you turn the focus back on yourself, not out of selfishness, but out of survival. You stop watching the door, waiting for someone who may never walk through it again. You start noticing the sun again. You start drinking your morning coffee not with dread but with gratitude. You find small joys that are yours and yours alone. A walk in the park, a phone call with a friend, a laugh you didn't expect. You begin to rebuild, not the relationship but yourself. And something else starts to happen too. You begin to remember who you were before your heart was broken, before your life started revolving around someone else's decisions. You remember that you're not just a parent. You are a person with stories, with strength, with wisdom that didn't vanish the day your child pulled away. When you reach that place of calm, something amazing happens. You stop needing to prove anything. You no longer need to be seen. You no longer need to be validated. Your energy speaks for you. And the most amazing part? That's the energy they feel. Children often expect their parents to fall apart, to chase, to beg, to keep the door open forever. And when they see you thriving, quietly, steadily, without them, it changes the dynamic. It forces them to see you not as a wounded figure, but as someone who stands tall, with or without their approval. This doesn't guarantee they'll come back, but that's not the point anymore. The goal is not to win them back. The goal is to win yourself back. Because you matter. Your peace matters. And your story isn't over. There's a quiet kind of strength that shows up when you stop waiting for someone to return and start building a life that doesn't depend on them. And that strength isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It just grows, one peaceful moment at a time. You see, when you shift from silence to indifference, something else starts to rise. Your power. Not over anyone else, but within yourself. You stop feeling helpless. You stop spinning in that exhausting cycle of, maybe they'll call today. Instead, you begin to walk with clarity, even when the pain is still fresh. You begin to realize that your worth was never dependent on whether or not your child appreciated it. And that's when a strange thing happens. The dynamic starts to shift, not because you forced it, but because you removed your emotional investment. The game, if we can call it that, changes the moment you stop playing. Now let's talk about something very few people dare to say out loud. The dark side of family dynamics. The side where love turns into leverage and silence becomes strategy. When adult children pull away, they sometimes assume that time will weaken you, that you'll soften, break, or eventually give in. And to be fair, many parents do. They reach out, apologize for things they didn't do, send holiday gifts just to get some kind of response, or make excuses to reconnect. And their children learn something dangerous from that. If I ignore you long enough, you'll chase me. But what happens when you don't? What happens when you don't chase, don't explain, don't try to prove your worth? What happens when you calmly and consistently live your life without making a show of it? That's when the story flips. That's when your child, who once felt in control, starts to feel uncertain. Because here's the truth. Human beings are wired to want what feels scarce. They value what feels solid, confident, unshaken. And when they realize you're no longer emotionally available, that you're no longer hoping for their return, they start to feel something they never expected: regret. They may not admit it, they may not even fully understand it, but it shows up in small ways. A text out of nowhere, a random comment on an old photo, a friend saying, "Your son mentioned you the other day." They'll test the waters just to see if the door's still open. And this is where many parents stumble. That first reach out from your child can feel like a life raft. You want to believe it's a change of heart, that they're finally seeing clearly. But more often than not, it's not about reconciliation, it's about reassurance. They want to know if you're still emotionally available, if they still have power, if they can still tug on your heart even after all this time. So they'll send a light message. How are you? Or, just thinking of you. It's not an apology. It's not an invitation to rebuild. It's a test. And how you respond defines everything. That comes next. If you jump in with open arms, desperate for connection, they know they still control the terms. If you ignore them out of bitterness, they'll label you cold and unforgiving. But if you respond with calm, steady detachment, kind, but not emotionally entangled, they won't know what to do with that. Because now the power has shifted. You're not angry. You're not begging. You're just fine. And for someone who assumed you'd always be waiting, that's unsettling. This is the stage I call silent domination. It's when your stability becomes your response. No dramatic posts, no cryptic messages, no long conversations, trying to fix things. You just live. You focus on your routines, your health, your joys. You speak only when needed and with peace. You do not reach out unless there's a real reason. And even then, you do so without expectation. And let me tell you, this level of peace is rare, especially in a world that tells you to chase closure, to fight for relationships, to never give up on family. But here's what no one tells you. Sometimes choosing peace over pursuit is the most loving thing you can do for yourself. And this isn't about pretending. It's not about building walls. It's about refusing to let pain make your choices for you anymore. As you begin to live in this new energy, something changes in your presence. People around you start to notice. You carry yourself differently. You speak with more intention. You take up space not with noise, but with quiet assurance. And when that happens, your children, yes, even the distant ones feel it too. They may not say it. They may not even know how to describe it, but they'll start to wonder, what happened to mom? What's changed about dad? Not in an accusatory way, but in a way that comes from curiosity. Because when someone stops chasing, they become a mystery. And mystery is powerful. This is where the social shift comes in. You don't vanish, you evolve, right in plain sight. If you use social media, you don't post to get their attention. You post to reflect the life you're building. Photos with friends, a hobby you picked up, a garden you're tending, a peaceful sunrise. There are no captions screaming for attention. No passive-aggressive quotes about forgiveness. Just small glimpses of a life being lived fully, quietly, without them. And that subtle, consistent presence becomes impossible to ignore, especially for someone who expected you to stay stuck. They may check your page more than you realize. They may mention you to others, trying to decode whether you've truly moved on. And that's when the confusion starts for them, because now they don't know where they stand. The parent they once ignored now feels untouchable. But the best part of this transformation? You're not doing it for them. This isn't about manipulating your kids into coming back. It's about becoming whole, with or without them. It's about finally understanding that your life is not a waiting room for someone else's decision. And once you fully embrace that, you step into a kind of freedom that no one can take from you. Because you've done something most people never do. You've turned heartbreak into fuel and silence into strength. There's something deeply powerful about reaching a place where you no longer need to be seen to feel secure, when you no longer need an apology to feel healed, when you can hear from someone who once broke your heart and feel nothing but peace. That, right there, is emotional freedom, and it's tested when your child finally reaches out again. It usually doesn't come with a dramatic apology or heartfelt confession, it comes quietly. A short message, a small comment on something you posted, maybe even a "hope you're well" after months or years of silence. At first, your heart might leap. You may feel the rush of memories, of longing, of the parent-child bond you once cherished. But this is the test. This is where everything you've built, your healing, your boundaries, your sense of self, is either honored or undone. The old you might have jumped at the chance, replied quickly, tried to fix it, talk it out, dive back into the emotional roller coaster, but not this time. Because now you know better. You know the difference between love and longing, between connection and control. So instead of reacting, you pause. You ask yourself, what do I owe myself right now? Peace or closure, dignity or drama? And if you answer honestly, you realize you owe yourself peace. So maybe you respond, but it's measured, calm, brief. Not cold, but not open-ended. You don't ask for explanations. You don't dig into the past. You don't treat it like a reunion. Because you've stopped expecting others to heal you, you've stopped needing them to understand everything you went through. And if you choose not to respond at all, that's okay too. Silence can be a response, especially when it comes from strength, not spite. This is what it means to be emotionally untouchable, not because you're hardened or bitter, but because your well-being no longer hinges on someone else's behavior. You've found peace in yourself, and you're not willing to trade it for temporary validation. When your kids realize they can no longer trigger you, no longer get a reaction, they're left to face their own choices. Not because you're punishing them, but because you've truly moved on. And that's what stings more than any confrontation. That's what makes them question things. You're not angry, you're not needy, you're simply not participating in the dynamic anymore. And that's when something incredible happens. You stop needing the past to be different. You stop needing people to admit what they did. You stop waiting for someone to make it right, because you've made it right for yourself. And you know what? You look around and realize you're living differently. Maybe your home feels lighter, maybe your mornings feel calmer, maybe you're laughing again in small, unexpected ways. You start making plans that don't revolve around waiting. You start remembering who you are when you're not hurting. And you realize this is it. This is the final shift. You've become someone they can't reach anymore. Not because you blocked them, but because you grew beyond the pain. You've become untouchable, not because you don't care, but because you care about yourself now. There's a moment late in this journey where you understand that closure was never going to come from them. It came when you stopped needing it, when you stopped replaying every conversation, stopped asking, "Why did they do this to me?" and started asking, "What can I do with this experience now?" And you did something beautiful. You didn't just survive. You transformed. You became someone new, someone stronger, someone who doesn't chase people, who chooses to walk away, someone who lives fully. Not as a parent, waiting to be needed again, but as a whole person, building something joyful, steady, and fulfilling that brings you into the new reality. It's a life on your terms. No more shrinking to keep the peace. No more bending over backward for someone who doesn't respect your presence. No more defining yourself by who stays or who leaves. In this new chapter, you take walks just because you enjoy them, not to clear your head. You cook meals you love for yourself, not hoping someone will join you. You decorate your space in a way that feels warm to you, not trying to impress or attract. You reconnect with hobbies, with music, with your own inner world. You stop asking, "What will they think?" and start asking, "What do I want?" You no longer need to be seen to feel seen, because you see yourself now, and that is enough. And perhaps the most beautiful part, You realize that the greatest gift you ever gave your child was your love. And the greatest gift you can now give yourself is your freedom. You're not the same person who begged for understanding. You're not the parent who used to cry over unanswered messages. You've outgrown that space. Not because you stopped loving, but because you started loving in a different direction, inward. This isn't about revenge. It's not about winning. It's about reclaiming your power quietly, peacefully, gracefully. And if your children come back, they won't find the person they left. They'll find someone wiser, someone grounded, someone who won't settle for one-sided love. But whether they return or not, you're okay. More than okay. You're thriving. Because you've done what so many never do. You turned heartbreak into strength and silence into growth. And now you're unstoppable. So if you're sitting in that quiet space today, if your phone hasn't buzzed, if the holidays feel a little emptier, if your heart still aches from what was lost, I want you to hear this. You are not alone. You are not broken. And this isn't the end. This is your beginning. Your turning point. Your rise. You control your future now. And you owe it to yourself to live it well. So take a breath, lift your head, and step forward, not in anger but in strength. Because you are worth the peace you're building. And that peace is yours to keep. If this spoke to your heart, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you experienced this kind of shift? Are you still in the middle of it? Share whatever you feel led to share. We're here to support each other. And if you found value in this message, hit the like button, subscribe to Strong Elderly Life, and turn on the bell for more encouragement and wisdom. You've already come this far, and you're just getting started. Here's to living with strength, dignity, and peace at any age.